Speaks. President Trump's son-in-law denies any collusion with Russia during the 2016 campaign. A heart-wrenching choice. The parents of baby Charlie Gard make a tearful announcement about their son's fate. And pleading ignorance. The driver of a lethally hot truck crammed full of illegal immigrants says he had no idea what he was transporting. Thanks for being with me, everyone. I'm Amaral Walker. Michael Holmes is on assignment, and this is CNN Today. Welcome, everyone. The White House says the U.S. president is very proud of his son-in-law and senior advisor and thinks he, quote, did a great job when speaking about his meetings with Russians last year. Now, this is the first time we are hearing publicly from Jared Kushner since the Russia scandal blew up. He has denied any wrongdoing, but that's still very much under investigation. Manu Raju has more.
Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law and senior advisor, tried today to put to rest mounting questions about his interactions with Russian officials that are now a key part of investigations into Russian meddling in the elections. In rare public remarks at the White House, Kushner insisted his meetings occurred during the normal course of a campaign and transition.
All of my actions were proper. Let me be very clear. I did not collude with Russia, nor do I know of anyone else in the campaign who did so.
Kushner today spent more than 2 hours behind closed doors with staff of the Senate Intelligence Committee and released an 11-page statement providing new insight into 4 meetings with Russians last year, including a June 2016 meeting at Trump Tower with Russians at the invitation of his brother-in-law, Donald Trump Jr., a meeting now under investigation since Trump Jr. was promised dirt on the Clinton campaign after being told the Russian government wanted his father to win the presidency. While Kushner said, quote, I did not read Trump Jr.'s email exchange ahead of the meeting, he dismissed the brief meeting as irrelevant, with no discussion of campaign issues, saying, quote, there was no follow-up to the meeting that I'm aware of. Kushner also confirmed sitting down during the transition with Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak, along with Trump's former national security advisor, Michael Flynn, also under scrutiny in the Russia probes. The men discussed whether a secure line of communication could be set up to transmit sensitive information between Washington and Moscow to discuss the war in Syria. But he said the idea was tabled until after the inauguration. Kushner said he did not discuss easing Russia's sanctions in meetings with Kislyak and the head of a Russian bank last December. But some members of the Senate Intelligence Committee who did not participate in today's session also want a chance to question him.
You want to personally question him?
Oh, yeah, I want to be there. Yeah, I have questions. We all have questions to ask.
At the White House, the president continued to focus on the Russia investigation, this time taking aim at his own attorney general, Jeff Sessions, calling him beleaguered and questioning why he isn't looking into, quote, crooked Hillary's crimes and Russia relations. This after the Washington Post, citing classified intelligence, reported that Kislyak told his superiors he spoke with Sessions about campaign issues last year, something the Attorney General continues to deny. The president offering this reaction when asked today if Sessions should resign.
Mr. President, should Jeff Sessions resign?
Now, just as the Attorney General was under pressure from his own administration, now Democrats on Congress are calling for him to once again appear in a public session, this time before the Senate Judiciary Committee, which has not heard from him in the nearly 6 months since he became Attorney General. The Democrat on that committee, Dianne Feinstein, renewing her calls for Sessions to appear, but the Republican chairman of the committee, Chuck Grassley, has yet to schedule a hearing. Now, at the same time, that panel is calling for a private interview for both Paul Manafort and Donald Trump Jr. after those two men cut a deal last week to avoid a public hearing on Wednesday. The question is, when will they come in before their private interview before the committee? Feinstein tells me no date has been set just yet. Manu Raju, CNN, Capitol Hill.
CNN political analyst Mark Preston coming to us now from CNN Washington. Always good to see you, Mark. So given that this was Jared Kushner's first public account of his meeting with Russian officials, did his statements to you offer clarity as to why he had these meetings or even why he omitted them from his security clearance forms?
Well, a couple things. One is it certainly provided more detail about his two separate meetings he held with the now former ambassador from Russia to the United States, Sergei Kislyak. It also provided a little more detail about his meeting with the Russian banker, as well as this real infamous meeting that he attended with his brother-in-law back in June, where there were Russians who were trying to peddle information that could be detrimental to Hillary Clinton's campaign here in the United States. Does it satisfy everyone here in the U.S.? I don't think so. He did say that there was a clerical mistake, I guess the best way to describe it, the reason why all of these meetings were not disclosed on his security clearance disclosures. But as you said, the investigators right now are looking into it. Not only are we seeing that with separate investigations, 2 in the Senate, 1 in the House, we're also seeing this independent investigation occur that is taking place as we speak.
Yeah, he was pinning this omission on his assistant as some kind of oversight. What also I found interesting, Mark, was that Kushner in this statement, 11-page statement, was painting himself as being, so incredibly busy that he didn't have the time to thoroughly read through the 200 emails or so that he says he gets daily and that he was overworked. His statement read this in part: over the course of the campaign, I had incoming contacts with people from approximately 15 countries. To put these requests in context, I must have received thousands of calls, letters, and emails from people looking to talk or meet on a variety of issues and topics, including hundreds from outside the United States. While I could not be responsive to everyone, I tried to be respectful of any foreign government contact. He also alluded to the fact that, he was quite inexperienced in politics in that statement. So I guess that begs the question, why is he still in charge of almost everything then if he's admitting he can barely keep up?
Right. And a couple of things. One is, let's go back to June 2016, the meeting that he had with his brother-in-law, Donald Trump Jr. It is hard to believe that he did not know what the crutch of that meeting was about. Now, it's possible he didn't, but it is hard to believe that he did not know that going into that meeting that he was going to meet with some people who had damaging evidence or so-called damaging evidence against Hillary Clinton. To the second point, though, I think is just as important, if not more important at this time. If you explain that you are a novice when it comes to politics, why are you in charge of so many things at the White House, including trying to bring peace to the Middle East? So if you are a foreign leader, you have to be wondering yourself, why am I discussing any kind of details with somebody who has acknowledged that he has no knowledge about how to proceed?
Yeah, fair point there. And of course, President Trump, he's continuing to air out his frustration about the Russia probe on Twitter. We also saw that eye roll in Manu Raju's piece when he was asked if Jeff Sessions should resign. President Trump tweeted this on Monday morning, a pair of tweets. He said, quote, after 1 year of investigation with zero evidence being found, Chuck Schumer just stated that Democrats should blame ourselves, not Russia. Then the president followed that up with another tweet saying, so why aren't the committees and investigators and, of course, our beleaguered AG, Attorney General, looking into crooked Hillary's crimes and Russia relations? So, Mark, how do you read into President Trump's latest criticism of Jeff Sessions? Do you see him here trying to pressure him to resign so that he does not have to fire the Attorney General?
Correct. In many ways, I think you have hit the nail on the head. And for our viewers around the world, Jeff Sessions oversees the whole judiciary system in terms of prosecution here in the U.S. and had stepped down from the decision-making process when it came to the Russian investigation because he was so close to it. He himself had met with Russian officials during the campaign. But to have the President of the United States go out and really attack his Attorney General so directly can only mean one thing. He wants Jeff Sessions to quit. He doesn't want to fire him. Now, if you're Jeff Sessions right now, you probably do feel beleaguered and feel under siege at this time, because not only are you taking incoming from Democrats on Capitol Hill, you're also taking it from the President of the United States on the other side.
An update now on a story we have been reporting. Israeli crews have begun dismantling the metal detectors at the entrances to the Temple Mount, or Noble Sanctuary, in Jerusalem's Old City that have infuriated Muslims and set off fierce clashes. The Prime Minister's office says they'll be replaced with advanced smart inspection technologies. Now, Israel installed the metal detectors after 2 Israeli police guards were shot and killed on July 14th. Now, removing the detectors comes hours after Israel's prime minister reached an agreement with Jordan to let Israel's embassy staff in Amman to return home. It's not clear whether the two events are related. The departure includes an embassy security guard who fatally shot a Jordanian man who attacked him. A second Jordanian man also died in that incident. Charlie Gard's parents are giving up their legal fight to take their son to the U.S. for treatment. They say the decision was based on new MRI and full body scans that show it's too late to treat the terminally ill baby. Charlie, who is almost 1 year old, has a rare genetic disease and can't breathe or move on his own. CNN's Erin McLaughlin has more now from London.
Well, Charlie Gard's parents have made the emotional decision to let their baby go. This after a full body MRI scan analyzed by independent experts showed that Charlie's muscles have atrophied to such an extent that the experimental treatment the parents were hoping for would ultimately be futile. Charlie Gard's father, Chris, made an emotional statement outside the court saying goodbye to his baby boy.
To Charlie, we say, Mummy and Daddy, we love you so much. We always have and we always will, and we are so sorry that we couldn't save you. Sweet dreams, baby. Sleep tight, our beautiful little boy. We love you.
Well, Charlie's parents are clearly still extremely angry with the hospital treating Charlie as well as with the court system. Justice Francis, the judge presiding over this case, for his part, paid tribute to the parents, saying no parent could have done more for their child. He also was extremely critical of what he characterized to be outside interference, which included, quote, the absurd notion which has appeared in recent days that Charlie has been a prisoner of the National Health Service or that the National Health Service has the power to decide Charlie's fate. This is the antithesis of the truth. In this country, children have rights independent of their parents. And it has been the court system, 3 separate occasions, taking the decision that this experimental treatment would be futile for Charlie Gard. Now, in light of this new full-body MRI scan, the parents are in agreement, and they are now working with the hospital to decide Charlie's end-of-life care. Erin McLaughlin, CNN, London.
The driver of a truck full of undocumented immigrants found in San Antonio, Texas, has been charged as the death toll goes up to 10 in a human trafficking tragedy. A federal criminal complaint says James Bradley Jr. knowingly transported the migrants and did not call for help even after seeing at least one body. CNN's Ed Lavandera joining us now live from San Antonio. Just a truly horrific story. Ed, what's the latest on this investigation?
Well, earlier today, James Bradley, 60 years old, of Clearwater, Florida, made his first court appearance where he was given the information about the criminal charges that he would be facing here. So all of that beginning to transpire this morning. Bradley didn't say much in that court hearing, but part of that hearing involved also the release of a criminal complaint, several pages long, that really laid out some of the most specific details we've seen so far in this case, and it is a rather troubling document to read. Talked about how there were at some point some of the people who were inside had described to investigators that there might have been around 200 people inside the back of that trailer at one point along the journey from the Texas-Mexico border all the way up to San Antonio, and that there was a hole in the side of the trailer that people were taking turns trying to breathe fresh air through, and that people were gasping for air and starting to pass out, banging on the walls to try to get the attention of the driver. Just a horrific account to read, especially when you consider that now 10 people have died, nearly 20 others in critical condition, and we continue to monitor, and those people continue to be monitored and be checked out at local hospitals. But really, investigators focusing on Bradley and trying to unravel exactly how all of this process and how this smuggling operation worked and how it all ended up there at that Walmart parking lot in San Antonio, Texas, which is about a 2 to 2.5 hour drive from the Texas-Mexico border.
Such inhumane suffering. Ed Lavandera, thank you very much for that report. Well, Mexico has seen an increase in migrants since President Trump took office. It appears to be because of Trump's hard line on undocumented immigration. CNN's Leila Santiago takes us to Mexico's southern border.
Every day, hundreds cross this river. No questions asked.
It was very easy.
This is the other border affecting U.S. immigration policy, Mexico's southern border. It's so easy to cross here, we found people from Guatemala openly crossing to buy cheaper groceries in Mexico. What we didn't find, the flood of migrants that once crossed here fleeing violence and poverty in Central America. The reason?
After the new president in the United States, many people forget about the American dream. They don't want to go all the way down up there because they know they're going to have a problem.
For years, migrants who crossed the river came here, about 3 hours north to Arriaga. This was just 2 years ago. Migrants on their way to the U.S. packing a freight train known as La Bestia, the Beast.
The only way the immigrants got, to get to America.
Standing on top of the train today, it's empty. But months ago, you would have seen hundreds of immigrants filling the tops of these train cars. So what's changed? Well, you ask anyone around here, they'll tell you part of it is Trump talk. The other part? Mexico is cracking down on immigration coming in from the south. The Mexican government now patrols train stations, forcing smugglers to find new routes. Those smugglers are also charging more money.
So Donald Trump being president, they raised the price up to like 7,000.
But before President Trump, how much was it?
It was 3,000.
So it has more than doubled since President Trump.
Right.
Riding La Bestia cost Amarilis Mendoza much more. The 13-year-old from Guatemala lost her leg when she fell off the train in January. Her dream was to one day make it to the United States. She's given up on that, not because of her injury, but because she's heard the U.S. is deporting everyone. Her family now symbolizes migration in the Trump era, many choosing to make Mexico their final destination. So then his talk is working. It's impacting Mexico.
And now the problem is going to be here instead to be in the United States.
Mexico has seen a 150% increase in asylum applications since Trump was elected. But many here don't consider his tough talk to be lasting policy, believing the flow of migrants will soon return. For Jose Machado, that time is now.
It's how I beg for money here to keep traveling to America.
He begs for money to get to Tennessee, where the 2-month-old daughter he has yet to meet is waiting.
They can't lock me up, like I say, I don't go try to see my family.
Family ties, for some, make it worth risking the odds that Trump's tough talk will not turn into action. Leila Santiago, CNN, Chiapas, Mexico.
A powerful story there by Leila Santiago. Coming up on CNN today, it is an eye for an eye in the Philippines. President Duterte uses his State of the Nation address to double down on his controversial drug war. Then, a case that's become a thorn in the Kremlin's side. It involves allegations of massive fraud and a death under suspicious circumstances. The story ahead on CNN today.
Can you fly? Can you fly through time? Can you fly through space? Can you fly higher than me? Can you fly forever? Inspiration gives wings to the mind. Fly with your mind.
I fell in love with the culture and heritage of Hanoi. It has 4 UNESCO World Heritage Awards, but what's really incredible about it is the mix of this 1,000-year-old historic town and a new modern city. There's a wealth of nostalgia in Hanoi's old quarter. You can enjoy peace at Hoan Kiem Lake and discover history at the Imperial Citadel. It's my gateway to the rest of Vietnam. Hanoi, the cradle of heritage.
That seagull's not going to steal my phone, is it?
Business is always changing. Keep up with CNN Money. Maggie Lake is live in the heart of the world's economic epicenter, New York City, tracking all the action of the stock exchanges and the big business stories from around the world. Get top analysis of market movement and a daily breakdown of financial headlines. CNN Money with Maggie Lake, tonight only on CNN.
Welcome, everyone. Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte is not bowing to international pressure. He promises to keep going full steam ahead with the country's bloody drug war. Now, Mr. Duterte gave his State of the Union speech Monday. Its theme, a comfortable life for all. The president also vowed to keep fighting ISIS militants who captured the southern city of Marawi earlier this year. Maria Reza is a CEO and executive editor of Rapper, an online Philippine newspaper. She's joining us now via Skype from the capital city of Manila. I meant to say Rappler. Apologies for that. Maria, always good to see you. We heard from Duterte during that State of the Nation speech. He basically vowed to keep on fighting, especially in this drug war. It will be unrelenting. How was his speech received in the country?
Again, keep in mind, this is our most popular president since Ferdinand Marcos. Also, simultaneously, the most powerful. The last surveys showed him at about 82% approval ratings nationwide. So even as he made some of the worst statements that criticized and insulted and attacked people who sat in the audience, the people who were watching applauded him. He was expected to lay out both his accomplishments and the way forward for the Philippines. Unfortunately, aside from the pet peeves of President Duterte, the drug war, he did ask for tax reform, there was very little true policy laid out.
82% approval rating, that's at least what one poll shows. That is quite astounding. And when it comes to his drug war, Maria, we know it's been about, what, a year since President Duterte carried out this violent war on drugs. There have been thousands of people who have died as a result, many extrajudicial killings, widespread international condemnation. But has there been a difference on the drug usage and trafficking in the Philippines since this drug war began?
President Duterte is defiant. In fact, that was the main theme. He stayed on script for about 20 minutes. And in those first 20 minutes, he was focused, very elaborately focused on the drug war. And he said that he would defy anyone who would try to stop him. The president believes this is his main focus. He also then went on to attack those who have attacked him based on human rights or extrajudicial killings based on these charges. At least 8 different people and groups were singled out. That included the UN, which has been critical of the president, former U.S. President Barack Obama, the International Criminal Court, a detained senator who is considered his harshest critic, the left, and media, including our own news group.
He also spoke about the insurgency in Marawi, and that battle to retake that island city continues. What is the latest on the fight to retake Marawi? Because we understand there are, 300 people still hostage there?
That's correct. That's the president's report as of Friday. And Saturday, just last Saturday, the joint session of Congress voted overwhelmingly 294 to actually only 18 members of the legislators voted against the maintaining martial law until the end of the year. It is still difficult in Marawi, and fighting still continues. Gunmen using high-powered military and grenades, local fighters backed by foreign fighters. This is the reason why President Duterte got that. The vote was overwhelming, 261 to 18. So President Duterte has what he wants. The question is, will these militants be controlled?
And martial law on the island of Mindanao has been extended, correct?
Extended 6 months. Again, this is an unprecedented time. Normally, the Constitution would allow an extension of 2 months, 60 days. The first 60 days was supposed to end Saturday. Before it did that, the joint session of Congress went ahead and extended it for what the president asked for, all the way until December 31. I think the other part that was interesting about the State of the Nation address yesterday is that the president also said that all the human rights, any potential human rights violations, he basically told troops, the police in particular, that I've got your back. You don't have to go to any kind of hearing. You don't have to be accountable because I will be accountable for you. Who knows what that could unleash?
Wow. Maria Reza, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us via Skype from Manila. In Pakistan, the Taliban there says it is responsible for a bomb blast killing more than 24 people. Video shows the moment of the explosion in the Punjabi capital of Lahore. Officials say the attack targeting police happened at a vegetable market at a city landmark Monday. The bombing wounded at least 49 others, and the Punjabi province chief minister on Twitter expressed his anger and said terrorists can never destroy their resolve. Now, the Taliban says it is behind a suicide attack in Afghanistan as a terror group ratchets up an offensive across the country. A car bombing Monday in Kabul killed at least 29 people. The Taliban spokesman says the bomb targeted a bus carrying Afghan intelligence staff. But the country's interior minister says all the victims were civilians. U.S. President Donald Trump is considering sending more troops to Afghanistan as the Taliban shows no signs of slowing. Time to take a short break here on CNN Today. When we come back, it is a face you may not know, but a name that is becoming more familiar. Ahead, why this late Russian lawyer is being mentioned in the Trump-Russia investigations and the mysterious circumstances surrounding his death. And supporters of a free press march in Turkey as 17 newspaper staffers go on trial accused of terrorism. We'll have the very latest from Istanbul.
Humankind is in its infancy, a child who has only just tamed fire, wind, and water, generated electricity from the sun and transmitted it across the world. A child who now understands that energy must be generated and consumed responsibly. And this is only the beginning. It's time to grow and create together. Astana Expo 2017, Future Energy.
Trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful
to beautiful beaches, going green could be easier than you think.
I fight to stop wasting food.
We're in the middle of the 6th mass extinction, and people need to know about that.
I'm working on trying to find solution to the invasion of plastic bottles.
Join me, Nikki Shields, as we meet everyday conservation heroes all across the world.
Saturday on CNN, in association with Kirloskar, enriching lives.
More than ever before, the future of the world's energy supply is under scrutiny.
Climate change is accelerating.
How do we cut carbon and keep the lights on? Join me, Nina Dos Santos, as we search for solutions in Kazakhstan on Powering Your World.
Tonight on CNN.
I'm Paula Newton in Caracas, and this is CNN.
Welcome back to CNN Today. I'm Amra Walker. Time now to get straight to our top stories. Israel has begun dismantling metal detectors it placed at entrances to one of Jerusalem's holiest sites that infuriated Palestinians and set off fierce clashes. Israel says it will replace the detectors outside the Temple Mount or Holy Sanctuary with smart inspection technologies. The parents of Charlie Gard are giving up their legal fight to take their son to the U.S. They say the decision was based on new body scans that show it's just too late to treat the terminally ill baby. Charlie, who is almost 1 year old, has a rare genetic disorder and can't breathe or move on his own. The driver of a sweltering truck full of undocumented immigrants found in San Antonio, Texas, has been charged. Authorities say 10 people have now died. A federal criminal complaint says James Bradley Jr. knowingly transported the migrants and did not call for help even after seeing at least one body. U.S. President Donald Trump's son-in-law says he did not collude with Russia and doesn't know of anyone else in the campaign who did either. This is Jared Kushner's first public account of his meetings with Russians during the presidential campaign and transition. Kushner, a senior advisor to Mr. Trump, insisted all of his actions were proper. Now, Donald Trump has routinely called the Russia story fake news and a witch hunt, but Kushner's comments seem to contradict earlier claims of zero contact between his camp and the Russians. Here's Tom Foreman.
Twice in the campaign and twice in the transition, the president's son-in-law and White House advisor met with Russians. And Jared Kushner says it was always proper.
Let me be very clear. I did not collude with Russia, nor do I know of anyone else in the campaign who did so.
But for months, amid questions about Russian meddling in the election, President Trump has pushed a different story.
I have nothing to do with Russia, folks, okay?
Dismissing claims anyone on his team even had contact with Russians.
No, nobody that I know of. Nobody
so you're not aware of any contacts during the course of the election?
How many times do I have to answer this question? I have nothing to do with Russia. To the best of my knowledge, no person that I deal with does.
On Twitter, he has roared. Russia talk is fake news put out by the Dems and played up by the media. Such dishonesty, a total scam.
Did you or anyone in your campaign have any contact with Russia leading up to or during the campaign? Nothing at all.
Vice President Mike Pence?
Did any advisor or anybody in the Trump campaign have any contact with the Russians who were trying to meddle in the election?
Oh, of course not.
Yet we know well before those denials, Kushner joined then-campaign chairman Paul Manafort and Donald Trump Jr. to meet with Russians after Trump Jr. was promised dirt on Hillary Clinton. Now he says the meeting was a bust, not even about that subject. But the very next month, there he was ridiculing Democrats for suggesting the Russians were trying to meddle.
It's disgusting. It's so phony.
Paul Manafort also vehemently dismissed the idea.
I don't know anything about what you just said. You may know it, and if you do, then you ought to expose it. But to say you know, I don't even know what you're talking about. It's crazy.
And that talking point has been echoed repeatedly ever since.
Did anyone involved in the Trump campaign have any contact with Russians trying to meddle with the election?
Absolutely not, and I discussed that with the president-elect just last night. Those conversations never happened.
As now Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders said earlier this year, it's hard to make a comment on something that never happened.
Now, the name Sergei Magnitsky has come up a lot during the investigations into President Trump and his team's Russia ties. Magnitsky was a lawyer who uncovered massive tax fraud in Russia. He died under suspicious circumstances in a Moscow prison. And another Russian lawyer is now fighting for justice for Magnitsky, all the while saying his own life is increasingly at risk. Claire Sebastian spoke to him.
Nikolai Gorokhov says he's lucky to be alive. In March, the Moscow lawyer fell from his 4-story apartment block, sustaining serious head injuries.
What happened?
К сожалению, либо к счастью, я не помню, что произошло. Я пришел в себя в реанимационном отделении больницы.
Russian media at the time reported it as an accident, that he fell while trying to winch a bathtub up to his balcony. Gorokhov says he had lifted much heavier things safely.
Is it possible it could have been an accident?
Я могу допустить, что это не был несчастный случай, потому что ряд обстоятельств свидетельствует именно об этом.
To understand that set of circumstances, you have to go back a decade. In 2007, Sergei Magnitsky, a lawyer for investment firm Hermitage Capital, uncovered a $230 million tax fraud that he claimed involved officials in the Russian government. Magnitsky was arrested in 2008, and a year later he died at this Moscow prison while awaiting trial. His family says he was denied medical care, and a Russian Presidential Human Rights Commission found he had been tortured. The Russian government, though, says he died of heart failure.
The bill is passed.
The U.S. Congress introduced the Magnitsky Act, which slapped sanctions on suspected Russian human rights abusers. Just 2 weeks later, Russia banned American adoptions of Russian children. In Moscow, Gorokhov took up the case. The day after his fall, he was due in court with new evidence that he says proved government officials were behind the fraud. He finally made it to court in May. His appeal was rejected.
Продолжаем добиваться правды, потому что время предоставляет новые доказательства невиновности Сергея.
Are you worried for your safety or for your family's safety?
Да, у меня есть опасения и по поводу моей личной судьбы, судьбы жены, ребенка.
At the time of his fall, Gorokhov was also a witness in a now settled New York lawsuit, alleging some of that Russian tax fraud money had been used to buy New York property. He had provided these documents to American prosecutors, 90 files in total. According to a court filing, those prosecutors were worried individuals in Russia could attempt to threaten or harm him. Still, in a case that's become a thorn in the Kremlin side, Gorokhov remains undeterred.
Справедливость, она Сергей Магнитский заслужил справедливость.
Claire Sebastian, CNN, Moscow.
A really fascinating story. Time to take a short break. When we come back on CNN today, journalists at Turkey's oldest newspaper go on trial in a case critics call an assault on press freedom. We're going to explain the charges that they face and what their trial may mean for Turkey's future. You're watching CNN Today.
SC Global adds a very unique feeling to their buildings. It's really a partnership between the designer and SC Global. Sculptura was done to produce a building that represents their brand. It has a composition of elements arranged in a vertical manner. So it's not just fluid, following one gesture. We had to pull it, we had to chisel it, mold it to accept views deep into the city. The most important thing is that sense of craft, beautifully put together of the elements that make the composition of the building. At the end, we have a very elegant building that flows with the landscape. It expresses itself.
And we have pushed the limit. We pushed the bar. We created Sculptura Art Mall, which has both great architecture and great living space.
All new Inside Africa. Unlocking the mysteries behind the continent you thought you knew. Orphaned chimpanzees are reintroduced to their wild sides.
The fact that the chimpanzees are now endangered, they need to try and do more.
Inside Africa, today, only on CNN, in association with Zenith Bank.
The United Nations Refugee Agency is tearing into Australia for allegedly reversing its pledge to resettle refugees it has held offshore for years. The UNHCR says more than 2,000 people denied entry to Australia are languishing on the islands of Nauru and Manus. It says Australia agreed to take in those with close Australian family ties, but is now refusing to do so and added, quote, "There is no doubt these vulnerable people should be reunited with their families in Australia. This is the humane and reasonable thing to do." The Australian government's decision to deny them this possibility is contrary to the fundamental principles of family unity and refugee protection and to common decency. Now, this is the Australia-run immigrant detention center of Nauru. Australia hasn't commented on the UN accusation, but it says its policy is clear and consistent that refugees who arrive by boat without visas will never be settled in Australia. 17 journalists, executives, and lawyers from one of Turkey's oldest and last opposition newspapers went on trial Monday in Istanbul. Prosecutors accuse them of terrorism, but critics say it is the latest assault on press freedom. Senior international correspondent Ben Wiedemann is in Istanbul with more.
Basically, this is their first trial. Some of them have been in pre-trial detention now for 9 months. They work with Cumhuriyet, which is Turkey's oldest newspaper, a very secular, Republican, and now opposition newspaper. Now, in the trial that began today, the prosecution tabled a 324-page indictment which accused these 17 staff members of having contact or working with the network of Fethullah Gulen. That's the U.S.-based cleric who's accused by the Turkish government of masterminding the failed July 15th, 2016 coup against the government here. Of course, Fethullah Gulen, who's now based in the United States, denies any involvement in that coup. But as a result of that coup, more than 50,000 people are now in detention awaiting trial. 150,000 have basically been dismissed from their jobs. The 17 members were also accused of ties with the PKK. That's the outlawed Kurdish Workers' Party that's been at war with the government since 1984. Now, it's ironic that one of the members of the staff on trial actually wrote a book about the ties, about the threat of the Gulen network to the Turkish state. But until 2013, Fethullah Gulen was an ally of the Turkish president, Erdogan, and another one of the staff members was kidnapped by the PKK. So definitely critics see this trial as a crackdown on freedom of the press and a crackdown on the opposition here in Turkey.
Thanks to Ben Wiedemann for that report from Istanbul. Well, there has been a new discovery deep inside the moon: water. And a good bit of it, according to Brown University scientists. As satellite images were being examined, scientists discovered volcanic ash and rocks contained water trapped in glass beads across the moon's surface. Now, that information, according to scientists, means the bulk interior of the moon is wet. Now, the colored areas you see on your screen indicate the highest water content, and the yellow and red levels are the richest water content. Quite fascinating. And you can check out more of our stories on our Facebook page. Don't forget about that. Go to facebook.com/CNN Today to find stories and interviews making headlines around the world. You can also watch any interviews you may have missed. Also, don't forget to like us. Don't forget to also follow us on Twitter. We're at CNN Today, @AmraCNN, @HolmesCNN. Thanks for watching, everyone. We will be back together tomorrow. I'm Amra Walker. World Sport is next.